Hey guys, welcome to another episode of That History Teacher with That History Teacher, Mr. Science. Today what we're going to be doing is we are going to start going through the French Revolution. And so what you will need is this packet. You're going to have to fill it in on Thursday. Please send in the completed worksheet so that way I can give you some points for it. Okay, that's basically completion points for the worksheet. We're going to do this in two parts, so I'll have two videos. This first one, and then obviously the French Revolution part 2. And I'll go through it. It's pretty much going to be pictures of stuff, so you don't have to see me all that much, which is probably good for you guys. Enjoy, and I can't wait until I can see you guys in person. The French Revolution is going to be pretty much in the 1790s, and it's going to sort of keep playing off of those ideas of the Enlightenment and the Scientific Revolution and even the Reformation, where people are asking those why questions and those how does this get better question. And so we see that as those ideas are spreading, and we also are going to see that there's this big gap between the rich people and the poor people. The poor people are realizing that they're not being treated well at all by the rich people, and so that's where some of these ideas are really going to manifest themselves. This map is going to show you just where stuff is that we're going to be talking about. France is going to be the main part of this, but when we get into talking about Napoleon in part 2, he'll be moving through the German states and Prussia and Austria and into Russia. Just so you can see where it is, here's a little map. This is King Louis XIV. Yes, the first thing you notice is either the hair or those crazy tights that he's showing off. Anyway, King Louis XIV, he's going to reign for 72 years. That's an incredibly long time. And while he's reigning, he is going to consolidate as much power as possible. He is the definition of an absolute monarch. So when we talked about that yesterday with the Enlightenment, this is an absolute monarch. Now, Louis XIV is also going to be known as the Sun King. And when you see some of the pictures of Versailles, in just a moment, you will see lots of suns sort of hidden around. I'll try to point them out as I can. The Palace of Versailles is extremely impressive, and we'll talk about that next. The Palace of Versailles was King Louis XIV's personal retreat. It was kind of like a hunting cabin, and it's going to be a hunting cabin on steroids. This thing is monstrous, but it is going to be amazing. It covers about 2,000 square acres. Some of the famous things that are sort of there, or the notable things that are there, are going to be the Hall of Mirrors, the King's Grand Apartment, and also the Royal Chapel, which I'll show you pictures of. In the Palace of Versailles, there's over 700 rooms. That includes 2,000 windows, 1,250 chimneys, just a lot and a lot of stuff, a lot of space. And this is because he wants to show off. He wants everybody to see how much power he has by flaunting his wealth. Now, these next couple pictures are of the same room, but from different angles. This is just a hallway, and this hallway is meant to trap as much light as possible. Look at all those prisms in those chandeliers and the mirrors along the side. He's known as the Sun King. He wants people to recognize that. And then along the top, he had paintings done similar to the Sistine Chapel, but some of them are also going to relate to the French greatness, because again, he's trying to show how powerful he and the French king as a position are. This picture is of a chapel that he had built. If you look closely at the very bottom of it, you'll see there's a picture of a sun. He had that put right in front of the altar to show that he is the next most powerful thing next to God. Okay, so this chapel is huge, and it is really, again, trying to show that he is that most Christian king that we had talked about before, and also that he is super powerful. This is just an artist's depiction of what the grounds of it would have looked like. Again, it was over 2,000 square acres. It's going to cover lots and lots of ground. You can see all the fountains And as you're entering it, you would realize how massive this is. Again, its goal is to show off how powerful the king is. Next, we have King Louis XVI. King Louis XVI is going to be way more oppressive than Louis XIV, and Louis XIV was very oppressive. People are going to be taxed more heavily because they have to pay for Versailles and all the work that goes on there, and the people don't have a choice in it because, again, the king has absolute power. Now, during Louis XVI's reign is when the Americans are going to have their revolution. And so France is going to help us with the American Revolution against the British because they didn't like the British. However, all of that is going to increase debt in France. People are going to be extremely upset. We're going to have high food prices. And eventually, because there's so much debt, it's going to cause issues with not wanting to hire anybody else. So unemployment is going to skyrocket. Some historians have it marked up near 50%, so almost half the people are going to be unemployed. One of the other things that Louis has working against him is he's going to marry Marie Antoinette of the Holy Roman Empire. So she's German. She is not French. She is going to take a lot of the scorn, a lot of the blame from the French people because of all these problems. Marie Antoinette, because she is a foreigner, she is not French, she's going to be an easy person to sort of blame. Partly because she likes really nice things. Again, she's a queen. Actually, she was the daughter of an emperor, so she was like kind of wanted to be an empress. And that means that people are going to see and hear her spending lavish amounts of money on extremely ridiculous things. Now, she never actually says, let them eat cake, like you might see in the Peabody and Mr. Sherman movie, but she is going to not seem to care that much about the people. So, on July 14th of 1789, an angry mob is going to storm the Bastille, which is a prison in Paris. They are doing it because it's sort of a representation of the power of the French royalty and of the government. So if they can sort of overthrow this prison, then they are going to be able to sort of demonstrate that that old order is overthrown. And this becomes a symbol of the revolution. You might even hear about Bastille Days when we're not in quarantine down in Milwaukee again. So Bastille is sort of famous for that. It would be the equivalent of like the Alamo in the Texas Revolution, where it is something that people can rally around and it's a national symbol. During this time of the start of the revolution, France's National Assembly, so the people that sort of have a say in government, but not really because the king has absolute power, is going to write this thing called the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. It's similar to the Magna Carta way back in 1215, where the English people were guaranteed rights, and the U.S. Declaration of Independence, which was only about 13 years before this is written. And it's going to focus on those natural rights that we talked about for the Enlightenment. Those ideas from Locke and some of those other philosophers, Rousseau, Voltaire, Montesquieu. And they want equal justice for the rich and the poor. They think people should be able to speak freely, especially because if you spoke against the king, you could be thrown in jail. Some of you might have noticed that it said political prisoners on the Bastille thing. That's because they had probably talked poorly about the government. They also want freedom of religion. The French king, remember, had called himself the most Christian king. And when he did that, he was really referring to the most Catholic king because he didn't allow any non-Catholic worship. Okay? So the people are going to want to be able to choose what religion they want. They want to be able to talk without fear of being arrested if they say something negative about the government. Those are all things they put in there. Now, eventually we are going to get a new government in France in 1792. And this is really, when we think the French Revolution, this is where things are really going to be happening. We have this group that is sort of this extreme radical group called the Jacobins, and what they are going to do is really push for this stuff to happen really fast. In fact, that group is sort of responsible for Louis the 16th and Marie Antoinette being beheaded at the guillotine, which I will talk about the guillotine in the part 2 episode. And things are just sort of going to descend into chaos for a while, and people are going to be fighting over it, so all of that is what's coming up. Hopefully this made sense. Hopefully you have it written down. We're going to continue with part 2 for the next video. Thank you.